Title: The old black man was humiliated at the airport. No one knew he was a secret billionaire. The brutal January wind, a tangible force, hammered against the glass walls of JFK International, its mournful howl a fitting soundtrack to the hidden anxieties simmering within Terminal 4. It was more than just the usual travel day jitters. There was a palpable undercurrent of tension, a sense of unease that clung to the air like the biting frost. Jerry Thompson, a figure seemingly insignificant amidst the bustling crowd, was the unknowing catalyst. His weathered, olive-green army surplus coat, a patchwork of repairs and faded glory, told a story of resilience and hardship. It was a story that few bothered to read. He clutched a worn leather suitcase, its brass clasps dulled with age. Its contents a mystery to the casual observer. He appeared to be just another traveler, perhaps a retiree headed south for warmth, or a veteran haunted by memories. But beneath the unassuming exterior resided Jeremiah Thompson, the unseen hand behind Thompson Investments, a financial titan whose decisions quietly shaped the global landscape. He was also a silent philanthropist, pouring millions into charitable causes without seeking recognition or reward. Here, in Terminal 4, he was simply Jerry, a carefully constructed persona designed to observe, to experience the world stripped bare of the filters of wealth and privilege. The harsh fluorescent lights of the security line cast a clinical glare on the scene, highlighting the anxious faces of hurried travelers. Jerry felt the familiar pang of apprehension as he approached the checkpoint. He'd navigated this gauntlet before, endured the probing glances, deflected the subtle prejudices. But today, the atmosphere felt different, charged with an almost palpable tension. The anonymity he had so painstakingly cultivated felt fragile, on the verge of being shattered. His gaze settled on Brandon Carter, the security agent, a figure radiating an almost aggressive sense of authority. Carter was young, no older than 30, his uniform immaculate, his posture ramrod straight. His eyes, cold and appraising, scanned the queue with a detached, almost disdainful gaze. Jerry recognized the glint of prejudice, the unconscious bias that categorized individuals based on superficial appearances. It was a look he'd encountered throughout his life, a look that saw not a person, but a stereotype. As Jerry neared the checkpoint, Carter's eyes narrowed, a smirk playing on his lips. Well, what have we here?" he drawled, his voice carrying across the otherwise quiet terminal. "Looks like someone's wandered in off the street. Lost, Grandpa? Looking for a warm place to sleep." The words hung in the air, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. Some averted their eyes, uncomfortable with the blatant disrespect. Others subtly shifted, positioning themselves to witness the unfolding drama. Jerry, his face a mask of quiet dignity, placed his suitcase on the conveyor belt. He had anticipated this. He was prepared for the questions, the insinuations, the thinly veiled hostility. What he didn't expect was the vehemence of the prejudice that was about to be unleashed, the clash of wills that would test his carefully cultivated composure. Carter gestured with exaggerated formality. "Shoes off, sir. Belt too. Everything out of your pockets. Let's keep things moving, shall we? We don't have all day." Jerry, his movements slow but deliberate, complied. The metal detector beeped as he passed through. "Hold it right there, old-timer," Carter barked, stepping directly into Jerry's path. "You tripped the alarm. Time to find out what you're hiding. Step over here, please." His eyes gleamed with a predatory intensity. He steered Jerry towards a small, sterile table, its surface littered with discarded items. "Open your bag. Slowly. And no sudden movements," Carter commanded, his hand subtly hovering near his sidearm. The small measure of power he wielded seemed to intoxicate him, fueling his arrogance. Jerry unzipped the suitcase. The contents, simple and unassuming, appeared to disappoint Carter. There were several well-worn paperbacks, biographies of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, a collection of poems by Maya Angelou, and a heavily annotated copy of The Souls of Black Folk. Beneath the books were several old newspapers, their headlines faded, their pages brittle with age, chronicling events from the civil rights era. And finally, a simple, outdated flip phone, its plastic casing scratched and worn. Carter rummaged through the bag, his movements bordering on aggressive. He tossed the books onto the table with a dismissive grunt, scattering them haphazardly. He unfolded the newspapers, his eyes scanning the headlines with thinly veiled boredom. "What's this, Pops? Reliving the glory days? Got some radical pamphlets you're trying to sneak past security?" He picked up the flip phone, examining it with mock suspicion. "Still rocking this antique? Can't afford an upgrade? I suppose. Living the high life, eh?" He pressed a few buttons, his face contorted in a sneer. "Probably can't even work this thing." The queue behind Jerry grew longer, the impatient murmurs of frustrated travelers adding to the already palpable tension. A young woman in a designer suit rolled her eyes, muttering something about overzealous security. A middle-aged man whispered to his wife about racial profiling. But no one intervened. Fear, apathy, and the desire to avoid confrontation held them captive. Carter, emboldened by the silence, escalated his harassment. "So, where are you headed, Grandpa? Escaping the winter? Got the cash for a one-way ticket to paradise? Or are you just planning on panhandling in the airport bathroom?" He erupted in a harsh, grating laugh, his colleagues joining in with forced amusement. Jerry remained silent, his gaze unwavering. He met Carter's eyes directly, his own filled with a deep, imperturbable calm. There was no anger, no fear, only a profound sense of disappointment. He had faced far worse in his life. He had endured prejudice in its most virulent forms. The casual insults, the dismissive assumptions were merely echoes of a deeper, more insidious societal ill. The silence seemed to infuriate Carter further. "Answer me, old man. Where do you think you're going? What's your business? And why are you traveling with such outdated belongings? You wouldn't be carrying anything you shouldn't, would you? Drugs? Weapons? Anything you're trying to sneak past security?" Jerry's voice, a low, resonant rumble, cut through the noise. "I am simply trying to board a flight, young man. I have no intention of causing any trouble. I do not wish for conflict. My only aim is to travel peacefully, is that so?" Carter sneered. "Well, I'm not convinced. I think we need to take a closer look. I'm calling for a full-body search. And I mean full body. Let's see if you're hiding anything under that old coat." He reached for his radio, his hand trembling with barely suppressed excitement. The atmosphere in the terminal reached a fever pitch. Just as Carter was about to call for backup, a voice, sharp and commanding, shattered the oppressive silence. "Stop this now." Lisa Carter, the human rights lawyer, strode forward, her face flushed with righteous anger. She was a formidable presence, tall and imposing, with a voice that could command a courtroom. "Officer, I demand you cease this unlawful search immediately," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "You have no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion. This is blatant harassment based on age and appearance. I am a lawyer, and I am witnessing an undeniable case of injustice. I demand you stop immediately." Brandon Carter stiffened, his face contorted with fury. "Mind your own business, lady. This is a security matter. I'm doing my job, ensuring the safety of all passengers, and I'm ensuring that this passenger's rights are protected," Lisa retorted, her voice dripping with disdain. "I'm prepared to file a formal complaint with the FAA, the TSA, the ACLU, and any other organization that will listen. This is an outrage, and it will not stand." She raised her phone, activating the camera. "The world is watching, officer. Explain yourself." A small crowd gathered around them, drawn by the escalating confrontation. Some whispered their support for Lisa, others nervously glanced at their watches, anxious to catch their flights. Jerry, his face a study in stoicism, raised a hand to calm Lisa. "It's all right, miss. I appreciate your concern, but I can handle this. Please, do not get yourself into trouble." I am used to this, it is just a part of life. He turned to Brandon, his eyes boring into the younger man's soul. Do you truly believe this is necessary? Do you honestly think I pose a threat to anyone? Or is this simply a display of power, an attempt to assert your dominance over someone you perceive as weaker? Brandon, flustered by Lisa's intervention and Jerry's unexpected composure, stammered. I'm just following protocol. I have reason to suspect, reason. Lisa interjected, her voice laced with sarcasm. What reason? His age. His clothes. The color of his skin. Is that your definition of reasonable suspicion, officer? I am not going to explain myself to you. Brandon shouted, you have no idea what kind of threats we face every single day. I am doing my job to keep everyone safe. Before Brandon could escalate further, a commotion erupted near the entrance to the security checkpoint. Stephen Harris, the airport CEO, his face pale and sweating profusely, pushed his way through the crowd, his eyes frantically searching for Jerry. Harris had received a frantic phone call from a board member of Thompson Investments, informing him that Jeremiah Thompson was traveling incognito through his airport. The potential consequences were devastating. A negative encounter with Thompson could jeopardize the lucrative contract he was desperately trying to secure for the new terminal expansion, a project that would define his legacy. Harris spotted Jerry and stumbled towards him, his polished facade crumbling. Mr. Thompson. I am so incredibly sorry. I had absolutely no idea. This is a complete misunderstanding. He turned to Brandon, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and rage. Carter. What in God's name do you think you're doing? Are you insane? Do you know who this man is? Brandon, utterly bewildered, stared at Harris in disbelief. Mr. Thompson. But he's just an old bum. There's no way. Harris ignored Brandon, dropping to his knees before Jerry, his voice trembling. Please, Mr. Thompson, forgive this inexcusable behavior. It is completely unacceptable, and I assure you, it will be dealt with swiftly and decisively. Anything, sir. Anything you wish. It will be done. The terminal fell silent. The revelation that the unassuming old man was, in fact, Jeremiah Thompson, one of the world's wealthiest and most influential figures, sent shockwaves through the crowd. The whispers grew louder, morphing into gasps of disbelief. People who had previously dismissed Jerry now stared at him with awe and a newfound respect. Bordering on reverence, Lisa, standing beside Jerry, exchanged a knowing glance with him. She had overheard a fragment of a frantic phone call Harris had been making earlier, confirming Thompson's identity and the desperate attempts to appease him. She knew this was bigger than just one incident of prejudice. This was about power, about privilege, and about the price of perception. Brandon stood paralyzed, his world crumbling around him. The magnitude of his error, the sheer audacity of his prejudice, struck him like a physical blow. He had not only humiliated a passenger, but he had also insulted and antagonized a man who held the power to destroy his career, his reputation, his entire future. The crowd, sensing the dramatic shift in power, turned on Brandon. Passengers who had previously remained silent now voiced their outrage, condemning his behavior and demanding his immediate dismissal. The social media machine, fueled by Lisa's video recording, was already churning, transforming Brandon into a viral pariah, a symbol of prejudice and abuse of authority. Jerry, his face etched with a weary sadness, raised a hand to silence the growing clamor. Enough, he said, his voice carrying a quiet but commanding authority. I do not wish to see this young man's life ruined. But he must learn from this experience. There has to be some kind of change. It is important that this situation is dealt with correctly. He turned to Harris, his gaze unwavering. I will not demand Mr. Carter's termination. However, I have a different proposition, one that I believe will be more effective than simply punishing him. Harris, desperate to appease Jerry and salvage his career, nodded eagerly. Anything, Mr. Thompson. Whatever you wish. Name it, and it shall be done. I want Mr. Carter to spend a year working in a homeless shelter funded by my foundation, Jerry said, his voice resolute. He will live among the people he has judged and mocked. He will witness their struggles, hear their stories, and learn to see them as human beings, not as stereotypes. He will have to change the way he views the world. To open his heart. Brandon stared at Jerry, his face a mixture of disbelief and relief. He had expected to be fired, to be ostracized, to be branded a racist for life. This was an opportunity, a chance to redeem himself, to atone for his actions. But it would also be a grueling, humbling, and profoundly uncomfortable experience. Harris, seizing the opportunity to demonstrate his supposed commitment to social justice, readily agreed. It will be done, Mr. Thompson. I give you my word. Mr. Carter will begin his service immediately. We will do whatever it takes to make sure he learns. Lisa, impressed by Jerry's wisdom and compassion, stepped forward. Mr. Thompson, I would be honored to offer my legal expertise to your foundation. I believe that together, we can make a real difference in fighting discrimination and promoting equality. We will fix the system, Jerry smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I would welcome that, Ms. Carter. Your passion and your dedication are truly inspiring. It will be an honor to work with you. Brandon began his year of service at the homeless shelter, initially resentful and resistant. He viewed it as a punishment, a humiliating penance he had to endure. He cleaned toilets, served meals, and listened to the stories of the homeless, the addicts, the mentally ill. He hated every second of it, but then he started to see. He met veterans haunted by the horrors of war. Single mothers struggling to provide for their children, and teenagers fleeing abusive homes. He saw himself reflected in their eyes, a flawed and vulnerable human being, capable of both great cruelty and great compassion. He began to develop empathy, to understand the experiences of the people he was serving. Slowly, his perspective began to shift. He started to see the world through their eyes, to understand their struggles, to empathize with their pain. He learned about the systemic inequalities that trapped people in poverty, the prejudice that denied them opportunities, and the lack of support that left them feeling isolated and hopeless. He changed the way he saw the world. He learned humility, empathy, and the true meaning of service. He formed genuine connections with the residents of the shelter, earning their trust and respect. He organized workshops to help them find jobs, provided legal assistance to those facing eviction, and volunteered his time to tutor children in after-school programs. He started to care about the people he was working with. By the end of the year, he was a changed man. The arrogance and disdain had vanished, replaced by a genuine warmth and a deep sense of commitment to social justice. He apologized to Jerry, his voice choked with emotion. I was wrong, Mr. Thompson. I was ignorant, and I was cruel. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to learn and to grow. You have saved me, and I am forever grateful. Jerry accepted his apology with grace and understanding. He saw the transformation in Brandon's eyes and knew that the young man had truly learned his lesson. He knew that his life would be forever changed. The new terminal at JFK International was eventually built, funded in part by a generous donation from the Thompson Family Foundation. It wasn't just a state-of-the-art facility, it was a symbol of inclusivity and opportunity, a place where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. It became a safe haven for those who needed it, and it was all thanks to one man. Lisa Carter continued to work with the foundation, advocating for the rights of marginalized communities and challenging discriminatory policies. She became a powerful voice for social justice, using her legal skills and her unwavering commitment to make a positive impact on the world. She became a champion for the voiceless. Jerry Thompson quietly returned to his life, a billionaire in disguise, continuing to use his wealth and influence to make a difference. He knew that the fight against prejudice and inequality was a never-ending battle, but he was determined to do his part, one act of kindness, one act of justice, at a time. He dedicated his life to helping others. The story of what happened in Terminal 4 became a local legend, a reminder of the price of prejudice, of the danger of judging people based on appearances. and of the transformative power of empathy and understanding. The lesson would be remembered for all of time, a lesson learned that day, and Jeremiah Thompson quietly continued, knowing that he had made a difference.